Welcome back to the online series of talks, lectures, and discussions being brought to you since 2020 by Aligarh Society of History and Archaeology, that is ASHA, and Ganga Jamni Heritage. We are meeting after a gap of around 2 weeks. The first due to Christmas, and the second due to New Year. I wish all of you a very, very happy New Year. I sincerely hope 2022 proves better and more positive to the world than what 2021 was. Our resolve remains the same, a percolation of a secular and scientific understanding of the past based on the actual primary sources. As our past discussions and lectures have demonstrated, the primary sources are of many kinds, some written and some more tangential and material. The documents, travelogues, annals, all type of records, coins, and of course buildings, structures, all of these things supply us information of how our past was. Amongst our built heritage, we may have individual monuments and structures, as well as whole townships and cities. Even how a city was inhabited and structured gives us an inkling of our past cultures and histories. If I say that material structural remains are much more in your face evidence of the past, probably I will not be very off the mark. Probably every one of you who has ever been a student of history would have experienced this. Whenever you tell a stranger that you study history, they will point out a building or a structure in their area and expect you to tell them about it. In general perception, a historian is someone who definitely knows about the architectural remains. And if you are unable to satisfy them, they will doubt your knowledge of history. I mean, that has happened to me a number of times. I mean, telling the people that you are actually not a student of architecture doesn't help. Further, in recent years, disciplines like a study of our built heritage, their upkeep and conservation has also grown. Even during the 19th century, we have had works like Hadiqatul Aqalim. The author of this work, Murtaza Hussain Allahyar Usmani, narrates in detail the morphology and general description of the towns which he visited. He enumerates uh, the historical details of these towns along with the individual structures which he came across them. Allahyar was following a well-established tradition of describing the built heritage practiced by, say, Firoz Shah Tughlaq, who used some structures as palimpsests, or Babur, who goes into the details of temples and palaces which he encountered at Gwalior. Abul Fazl too, in fact, noted down important structures of the past. For example, his description of the Gupta temples and sculptures of Kalinjar Fort. I mean, they are actually, those passages are to be read to understand how Abul Fazl is in fact dealing with the built heritage. Today, we have a number of individuals and organizations dealing with the heritage structures and remains. For example, we have INTAC, and many scholars and historians related with it. And then we have a host of independent individuals who are carrying out important works towards our understanding of our past built heritage. Today, we have one such scholar with us, Dr. Shashank Shekhar Sinha, who will talk to us on the importance of our built heritage and the importance of its understanding as far as we are concerned. Dr. Shashank Shekhar Sinha is an independent researcher and author. In a professional career spanning more than 27 years, he has taught history at undergraduate colleges in the University of Delhi for almost around a decade. And then he has also worked with Oxford University Press. He is currently working with Routledge as its publishing director. He is the author of two important works, namely Restless Mothers and Turbulent Daughters, Situating Tribes in Gender Studies, which was published way back in 2005. His second work, which I am showing here, Delhi, Agra, Fatehpur Sikri, Monuments, Cities and Connected Histories, was published last year. He has also been part of key academic committees of Indian Council of Social Sciences Research, as well as ICHR. Shashank works at the intersections of history and cultural anthropology and publishes regularly in academic journals and books on areas and issues related to the indigenous people, tribes, gender, witch hunting, and heritage and culture. With a view to highlight the gaps between academic and public understanding of history, he also writes for popular media platforms and features in television programs related to heritage and history. His articles on the UNESCO World Heritage Sites published in Frontline have been quite well received, and he has also featured on programs related to history and heritage on television channels like Rajya Sabha TV, News 19, News 18, NDTV 24/7, amongst others. I, for one, came into his contact for the first time when he was at Oxford University Press and was working on the publication of Professor Irfan Habib's Atlas of Ancient India. Today, he will talk to us on the theme Heritage Sites, History, and beyond. Over to you, Dr. Shashank Sinha. Shashank.
Uh, Thank you, Professor Nadeem Razavi. And a very happy new year to all of you. I hope the new year brings in new hopes uh, and proves to be, as Professor Razavi was saying, a better year in all respects, a more peaceful and productive year. Uh, First of all, let me thank Aligarh Society of History and Archaeology, ASHA, and Ganga Jamni Foundation for giving me a chance to share my thoughts. Professor Rizavi and Sagufta ji in particular. And I'm particularly happy that I have as my host Professor Nadeem Rizavi for two or three things. There are many things, that one can talk about, but in relation to today's lecture, he's an expert scholar in heritage sites. He makes a great use of digital media to create an outreach for history. And he himself runs a great blog, called Blast from the Past, which has had very good quality content. Today, what I'm going to talk about, it mostly deals, with the book that I've recently published, Delhi, Agra, and Sikri: Monument Cities and Connected Histories. And I do not come here, I'm aware that I'm talking to a group of historians. I do not come here as a primary expert on heritage sites, or as someone who is come here to share, primary findings, which I normally do in all my, talks, But I've come here to raise a few issues, since I'm talking to a community of historians, Like many of you, I have been, concerned and deeply concerned and disturbed at times about this progressively increasing gap between academic and public understandings of history and the repercussions it has on the social and political fabric. And in the process of doing that, I seek to highlight significant knowledge gaps at sites which are very critical for academic and public interface. I use heritage sites, of course, as an entry point for the talk today, and the books that I've discussed, and the sites that I've discussed. The 6 chapters are 6 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Delhi, Agra, and Fatehpur Sikri. I also have come here to share my experience of reading and visiting the heritage sites and the explorations that I entered into while in the process of doing that. But more importantly, I come here to make a case, to the historians about a more systematic and more creative engagement with the heritage sites. My desire to connect with, I was working, as Professor Razavi mentioned, on gender and tribe and witch hunting for a very long time. And this, what brought me to heritage sites was, my desire to connect.
Professor, I would suggest one thing, that please log out and log in once again, because your image is freezed. So please we'll try once again, so that probably it will improve after you log in once again.
Okay, I'll do that.
Sorry for the break, but I think
That's
that
fine.
would be. I'm sorry, friends, that we have asked Shashank, my friend, to relog back, because as you could see that his internet was not stable. The work which he is going to present before you, the talk which he is going to present before you, is actually very interesting, in the sense that he would be talking about the importance of reconnecting with our built heritage. Unfortunately, in India, that is one of the aspects which we Indians do not pay much attention to. If you go back to Europe, or even in Paris or Berlin or London, you would find that there is, a citizens' participation in understanding the built and cultural heritage of their countries. In fact, as far as we are concerned, most of our children, most of our citizens, most of our youngsters do not care about what exists. खंडहर हैं, मालूम नहीं क्या. I think studies which have been conducted by people like Shashank, people like Swapna Little, people like Rana Safavi are very important. So we have Shashank back once again. Let us hear him out. Shashank.
I'm sorry, just to query, what was I audible about all that I said so far?
Your voice was there, but your image
Okay.
was, freezing. So you carry.
Okay, right. So I begin with where I left, basically. So my engagement with heritage sites, began with a desire to reconnect with core historical matters. When I say core, I said core and visible historical matters. And that the desire to connect with history brought me to the monuments. And interestingly, my explorations with the monuments brought me back to history, brought me back to the basic drawing board, brought me back to the days of what we were being taught when we were being trained in the discipline of history. Right, and was very incident. And let me begin, by narrating an incident. And since the host for today's session is a well-known expert of Fatehpur Sikri, let me begin with an incident, which happened in Fatehpur Sikri, which did not get adequate media attention, but a very telling incident. In 2014, the Agra Divisional Commissioner and Agra Development Authority decided to install statues of Akbar's 9 courtiers, who were known as popularly known as Navratnas, right, within the heritage site complex. It's a small incident, but very significant. There are many incidents which have serious complications, which are adequately discussed. So that the desire to, on the part of district administrators, install statues of these 9 courtiers who were famously known as the Navaratnas. Now historians opposed the move, citing that there is no evidence in contemporary sources about any authentic or institutionalized list of the Navaratnas. ASI was in a doldrums, basically, right? There was no public outcry, and naturally so, because most of us have grown up, knowing that the Navratnas adorned, Akbar's court, and we have read a lot of stories about it as well. Now, this was a very particular incident, and which was stalled, not because of, purely because of, opposition from historians, but because that the 1958 Ancient Monuments Act prevented addition or deletion of any structures within the heritage site complex. Now that is a very, that has, this is a very telling incident, And the decision was then taken, then the district administration took the decision that, they will install it outside of the heritage site complex, in a facilitation center outside of the actual built complex, right? A very interesting component where, different components or different stakeholders in the journey of history get involved in very interesting ways. I'll take the story further about how history is received, again taking a case from Fatehpur Sikri, right? And this is about how people react to history, or how scholars from other discipline also, react with the discipline of history. And this is an incident that I refer to in details. I took up a case study about a storytelling that I was doing for India International Center seminar, which was, instituted a new series of lectures on history and heritage. Professor Himanshu Prabhare was the person who initiated this series of lecture. And at that one, I was talking about one of the case studies, basically about, which was related to the decline of Fatehpur Sikri. And one of the common stories, which is also very popular in folklore and very prominent in the narratives of all the tourist guides, is about the Akbar left Fatehpur Sikri because of the shortage of water. Professor Rizvi in his book, categorically debunks this notion, shows that there are other reasons and political factors about, political instability in the northwest of the country with the death of Akbar's half-brother. Now, I was doing a Google search, I deliberately did a Google search on this idea about. And what it led me to is very interesting ways about, and my idea of this search was to how do people read histories. And this thing about shortage of water has become such a commonplace, and it gets reinforced in so many narratives, extra academic narratives, that it has become almost like a public truth kind of a thing. And I was looking at it, and then I was looking at reports, newspaper reports that reproduce this thing for a variety of reasons. And I came across very interesting findings. Using Fatehpur Sikri, as a case study where, shortage of water left Akbar to, got Akbar to abandon the city. They talk about unmindful usage of water. There are news articles, and these are premium, newspapers. Stories which talk about unmindful usage of water, which caused, depletion and exhaustion of the groundwater shortage. And then another one I thought what was very, very, telling was somewhere, was featuring a very prominent scholar, from another discipline. And the story was that the Indian Union may get dissolved if it doesn't address water disputes. And then it goes on, the story gets on to, talk about, urbanization and shortage of groundwater. And then, it gets into Gurgaon. The story gets into Gurgaon and says that, Akbar still had Lahore to go to. Where would Gurgaon residents go if there is a shortage of water? So very interesting ways in which what we assume as history is borrowed and then established or perhaps accepted as a common sense or commonsensical view of history. And then various policies or various initiatives. In the first part, I talked about an administrative initiative. And in the second part, I'm talking about a scholar who is, talking about policy issues, right? Who does not belong to the study of history, talking about this. Now, where does it take to? It takes to a domain where we see that, how do people take to history, how public takes to history. And this is what my book explores, substantially explores through, a variety of case studies, through, all those things, I'm happy to, point out that many of the points that I made in this book, find a support, in a report, a survey report I just read, a few days back, which has just been published in 2021. And this is a survey by American Historical Association about how people experience history. So it addresses two parts. One is that how do people conceive history? And how do their conceptions, impact their understandings of the past or their attitudes towards the past? Now, I wish there could have been a similar survey here. And I'm also aware that, these findings have a context, a geographical context, but what was interesting for me, the findings of that survey have a different geographical context, but what was interesting to me was that how many of those, issues or, survey findings that came up in the reports had a resonance in the Indian context. Right. And I'll just say some of the broad findings, among many of the findings is that the first one was about how do people, receive history or public receives history. And the survey revealed that it is basically about nuts and bolts of factual information, which is basically an assembly of names, dates, and other facts, or an unchanging agglomeration of facts, contrary to the way the practitioners of history receive history, which is about a dynamic field which is constantly being reassessed. And facts are only building blocks and the past needs to be explained and interpreted. So as opposed to a simplistic understanding of the past and seeing history as an agglomeration of facts, unchanging facts, the emphasis in history on explaining the past, on interpreting the past. And then let me come to a couple of other findings. The sources from people get history, the public gets history is, they, it's about they consume history more passively, right? Rather than looking up, as opposed to looking at traditional sources for the study of the past. The third one was very interesting, which, because reinforces my findings in a very significant way, is that of the variety of sources they would use to study history, it ranged from, television, from films, from, news, from documentaries, to two things, which is museums and heritage sites, historic sites, as they would call it. And they were regarded as the most trustworthy sources because they are most tangible repositories of the past. And finally, one other finding that I'm going to talk about is that, making the narrative in a more interesting and available and accessible format added to the learning outcomes. Now, why did I get into the heritage sites, basically, and what were my key considerations, or what my key things, basically? About two. One is that, which I just mentioned about, in our day-to-day interactions with history, heritage sites are one of the most tangible, platforms for our day-to-day interactions with the discipline of history. And they are most unique in other ways, like museums and monuments are most unique sites. They are sites where you are face to face with history. They are sites where you have buildings, you have artifacts, right? And you have many things which you see, as opposed to, reading about heritage or opposed to hearing about heritage. So you are coming very close to a site where you are experiencing history as opposed to reading about it. You come closest to the idea of experiencing history. And in India, two other things have brought heritage sites closer to the people. When we look, these sites are very, very often sites of family outings as well. So they form a very integral part of the social and recreational world of the people, And with diminishing urban spaces, with new constructions that you all see about everywhere, these sites are now becoming a refuge of people for the social and recreational needs. And also with the advent of the digital media, the digital photography, the selfie with the monuments, these are becoming integrated to the common lives of people in more ways as well. But the second side, with the second broader factor, which I thought was very important, like history, heritage sites are fast becoming, sites for identity or sectarian politics. And this has very dangerous and unsettling implications as well, right? And this is what set me into explorations of the heritage sites, And of the various explorations I made, I am, a student of what we call, in terms of periodization, modern Indian history. So there was something which, I couldn't take very naturally to, things which are otherwise described as medieval Indian history, but I was trained as a historian to handle those sources, to handle those readings, not sources, right? So my first thing that I began with is that, I began with something which I was very, very comfortably took to, which is the study of afterlives of the sites from my, positioning in modern Indian history. What British did to the sites and what happened to the afterlife of the sites. And in the last couple of years, I've been talking extensively about it, the afterlives of the sites, and how the afterlife sometimes form a dominant framework for understanding the monuments. So a lot of what the monument was originally conceived doesn't feature into those understandings. What happens in the afterlife sometimes becomes the dominant frame of reference when you look at those heritage sites at the concerned historical periods. So I looked at, the standard set of readings, as opposed to, because I was not very, trained in, the primary sources, but I was trained in history. So I looked at very critical readings and all the prescribed readings. that form a part of all the university curriculums, and that also about such readings from the related disciplines. And this led me to further explorations in the idea, in the way history is taught and the pedagogy of history, right? And this is, so, and then I was trying to relate with the times that I was being, taught history. So heritage sites enter into the discipline of history primarily through the framework of art and architecture. And I was looking at the various books, basically, and I noticed that they are also used, photos of heritage sites are also used to illustrate historical periods or personalities or dynasties, right? So if you are going to talk about Mughals, there will be a Red Fort or there will be a Taj Mahal. If you're going to talk about the British, there'll be a Lutyens Delhi or there'll be a Victoria Memorial, right? So every time that you have a discussion around that, these photos would be accompanying, the textual component will be there. Now, in our teachings, and I've had a chance to teach at some undergraduate colleges, Professor Rizavi features a lot of, I noticed that in the Facebook he talks about site visits and all, but unfortunately that's not very common in many colleges or universities in India. The applied component of research, or visits to heritage sites, right? So our interactions with those heritage sites are mostly theoretical. When you go to visit those sites, you are able to connect the dots in terms of the gaps of our understanding, but mostly discipline. The third thing I noticed was a lot of focus on physicality of the monuments, right? And therefore, art and architecture could be very technical and could be intimidating. I was very intimidated when I so I would always skip the question on art and architecture. I would rather never prepare it, So I would say that, okay, if worst come worst, I'll deal with that question, out of the optional questions that we were required to answer. I said, this will be my last question. If I don't know anything else, then I'll answer that. I was used to be very, very, the social context of the architecture was conspicuously missing. And what I would have, when I started researching, I said that if the social context is there in terms of teaching and pedagogy, it would make the the interesting incident so insightful. So for instance, if I were to say that, a true arch is basically, composed of wedges, aligned, wedge shaped, blocks aligned, stone blocks aligned around a circular, or a semicircular pattern with a keystone in between, it used to intimidate me. And that keystone takes the weight of the structure. But when I was, reading about it, and I was having, interestingly, a discussion with Sohail Hashmi, and we were talking, exchanging notes on it. We talk about the social context of the arches, that how from the Greco-Roman world it comes to the, the sites which were, associated with Islamic kingdoms, and then comes to India, and then there is an idea of bringing about or replicating the arches and domes here. And the Indian masons are unable to do that. So what they come up with, that instead of those semicircular wedges, they come up with, what their experience of dealing with temples was. So progressively, increasing the number of blocks. So from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that is the, thing that they were used to. So it was, as opposed to, it was horizontal, elevation. And then what resulted was a false arch, or what is known as a corbelled arch. Now this made complete sense to me, because of the story, it made very complete sense to me. But much more than that, and this is where I refer to the third set of explorations with the heritage sites, and I pick up specific cases. There are many cases, but I pick up some cases from my book. When you look at the Qutb site, you look at also the iron pillar there, right? And this iron pillar tells you a story about multiple appropriations, multiple meanings, multiple contexts. This is originally a Gupta period, 4th, 5th century iron pillar, which talks more than just about, scientific achievements in metallurgy. It gets reappropriated by the Rajputs, the Tomar Rajputs. There's a famous Kili Dhili Katha appropriated by the Tomar Rajputs in 11th, 12th century, and then again by the Turks in 13th and 14th century. And in all cases, the meanings differ, and there are, multiple meanings. Same object in different geocultural terrains and time periods acquire multiple meanings. When you look at some very common examples like Taj and Red Fort, they become very important elements of nation making or nation building. Taj was appropriated as a symbol of a nation building project, as a symbol of composite culture. And after that, remained one of the dominant iconographic representations of India, of the idea of India also. Features in several places wherever they talk about excellence. The Red Fort gets associated with anti-colonial resistance much after it has been built, so 17th century and then, in middle of 19th century. The incidents located in the aftermath, but it gets associated with anti-colonial resistance during the 1857 rebellion, what is known as 1857 rebellion, and then also gets associated with Subhash Chandra Bose's trials. It was not Subhash Chandra Bose's struggle, INA movement, and also the INA trials when the nationalist movement is in a very mature phase. Likewise, the British also used the monuments in terms of divisive politics. And you see, I talk about, cases where they build up narratives around certain artifacts, right? So for instance, the Ghazni Gate at, Agra Fort, it, is presented as a Somnath Gate. And a narrative is created around it, and eventually, to also cover up their losses in the Anglo-Afghan War. And finally, when the gate arrives, and it was said that, Ghazni had taken away the gates and then brought it. When the gates came to Agra, it was eventually discovered that they were actually belonged to the tomb of Muhammad Ghazni, and that they were trying to create a divide over it. Likewise, the pillars from Congregational Mosque in the Qutub, what is currently known as Quwat al-Islam Mosque, there were pillars, there were molds, or models made from plaster of Paris, plaster of Paris of the pillars and the representations of the pillars, and they were sent to South Kensington Museum, which later became, developed into the Indian Museum for, showcasing or exhibiting, how their experiences of ruling in the subcontinent was. So the idea was to say that, we came and restored law and order. So there was violence, they involved destruction, and we brought in law and order. And then when you talk about, then the heritage sites also talk about cultural borrowing, I was, I was looking at this practice of Jharokha Darshan, which was borrowed from temples and appropriated by Rajput kings to showcase to the moment, and how Akbar and, also uses this and institutionalizes it. So you see the structures coming up in Fatehpur Sikri and later in the Red Fort. Interestingly, all the Mughal emperors were, involved with this Jharokha Darshan, mostly all of them. And later, at the time of Third Imperial Darbar, where the British in 1911, now they're talking about 20th century, at the time of the Third Imperial Darbar, 1911, when the British announced the change of capital from from Calcutta to New Delhi, the king, who was for the first time physically present, George V, and his queen appeared from that Jharokha in the Red Fort as a sign of appropriating the Mughal grandeur and as a sign of getting legitimacy for the rule, for the new rule and for the new city. So how, there are many interesting ways about it. And then it brought me, these explorations brought me to, the idea about how do we gain knowledge about these sites? How do people gain knowledge about these sites? And that took me to a very interesting trajectory of knowledge. How knowledge is produced, how knowledge is disseminated, and how knowledge is eventually consumed. And I'm talking about both informal and formal sources of knowledge, and also about the off-sites and the on-site knowledge patterns as well. And let me first talk about, the ones which are considered the most dominant form, the books and articles, academic books and articles. Right? Now, in the first place, these are the sources of knowledge which are produced in academic settings, but also circulated and consumed largely in the academic settings. Right? And within the history public. Now, let me just unfold it a bit. There are few books which deal directly with the history of monuments. That there are many scattered references in form of books and articles that deal with monuments, but not so directly in terms of it's not visible in the title, or but they came up with very interesting narratives. This Sunil Kumar, Upinder Singh, Barry Flood. And the first category I talked about is, Professor Rezavi's work, itself on Fatehpur Sikri, which is very directly concerned with the heritage sites and the city. And the second category, lot of scattered sources, by way of articles and this thing, which are not directly pitched as works on monuments, which are scattered, but very significant works which alter or modify our understandings of history. So these are very difficult to locate even for students. Sometimes become students of history unless and until you have a very aware teacher or somebody who could guide you to, or unless you are informed about that. So there are gaps within the academia as well. And when I talk about public, these books do not reach the sites. And when I say sites, I mean metaphorically and I mean literally as well. These books are not available in the sites around, the heritage sites, shops in the heritage sites. Right. The only place where I saw a book by an academician was Hampi, where John Fritz's book was available, which I thought was such a positive sign because a vendor was selling it, but otherwise you don't. Right, around the heritage sites, but sometimes people visit the sites, buy the books to go back and read the site about them later. Right, neither this knowledge reaches in the form in which it makes sense to the common, because that is the rigor of academic research. But it doesn't reach the site in the form in which a public relates to knowledge about monuments. And neither do this book, surprisingly, and I'll talk about it in a while, neither these books, academic books which carrying very sound academic knowledge, inform the narrative of the guides or the guidebooks available at the site. So where does that leave with, basically very interesting about how knowledge is produced and consumed, So we talked about it. Now there are many other things which have come into being. Now we have a very welcome development called heritage walks, where at least people who are informed, take you around. You have sound and light shows, where we have varying degrees of success, but good. So what are the other things they're left with? You're left with, what you find in the social and digital media, what you find in the travel websites. And travel websites, if you look at those sites or descriptions around those sites, you would find the same description being replicated. The ones which are more conscientious would use a rephrasing of some of the language, but the same thing being repeated over and over again. And now let me talk to you about the guidebooks or the official guidebooks which are available at the sites. They provide a good introduction and an overview. You also have things about technical details related to architecture. But what was not so happy to note, I was not so very pleased to notice that many of them, when I say many of them, lot of them have not been updated since a very long time. So on one hand, one side, we are saying that history, the knowledge of history or the discipline of history is dynamic. It is continuously reassessing itself, generating new forms of knowledge. But this new forms of knowledge is not traveling to the official guidebooks even. Despite all that talk about interdisciplinarity in research, and some of them are actually based on research which was done in early decades of 20th century. They have been put together with very glossy photographs, which somewhere counterbalance the impact of the outdated content. And many of these sites, or many of those knowledge that you have around these sites in the new forms of modern research, they have altered or modified our understandings of this site, but they don't get reflected in the guidebooks. And finally, let me come to the most dominant form of procuring knowledge at the site, which is the tourist guides. Now you get some tourist guides, right? Some of them are informed, some of them are also trained by ASI, but most of them have been trained at travel and tourism management institutes. and these guides take you around. And for the public, it's like a refresher course. So what you have read in your textbooks, the facts, you are able to relate it to your monuments. So it becomes something like a refresher course, a rebrush with history. But the primary purpose of the training under the Travel and Tourism Management Institute is not to provide an accurate definition of history or accurate account of history. The idea is to provide you a more enjoyable experience, right? And in the process of, coming up with very embellished facts, if you go, you see lots of things, you'll be surprised. People want to know. But you go to, these tourist guides are unaware and unmindful of the dangers their embellished stories pose to public understandings of history. So where are we left with? Basically, we are left with a situation whereby there is a lot of potential around these heritage sites, but whether we have been able to tap that potential even within the discipline of history is something that needs further exploration. Do we need new conceptual frameworks so that we move away from emphasis on art and architecture to many other things? Do we need new frameworks which encapsulate the layers and complexities about history? History talks about layers and complexity, and also includes the incorporate elements of the ecosystem around the monuments, the people and the surroundings, the cities. And this leads me to another question. There are many disciplines which study history. You have architecture, you have architects and architecture, you have now heritage studies, you have conservation and preservation studies, you have archaeology, you have art history, right? And now there is an emphasis, interdisciplinary courses are coming into being called heritage studies. Now, I have been trying to think that what special value history imparts as a discipline to the study of history, right? How does our training come into play when we study historical sites? And then I thought about few things. There could be many things, but I talked about few things. That it talks about an evidence-based approach. First of all, that the thing that Nadeem Sahab was talking right at the very beginning, the idea of sources-based information, right? It talks about context, that all these things have a context. It talks about the part and the whole, the smaller stories that I was talking to you about, the gate at the thing or the iron pillar, the part and the whole. It talks about notions of time and space, how the heritage sites carries different meanings and acquires different meanings in different contexts or different time zones, or different time periods. It talks about continuity and change. And most importantly, it talks about a constant dialogue between the past and the present. If we are reassessing history continuously, then that needs to reflect in our understandings of the site. So this dialogue between the past and present needs to come into play as well, right? And then I think that one of those things that we need to think about is broaden our understanding of the way in which we look at monuments. We need to look at them as heritage sites, which are repositories of wider historical and cultural knowledge. And we need to also move away from a monument-centered vision and explore with the larger world of monuments, the larger world of these sites. I try and do some of those things in a more accessible way when I talk about the larger geocultural connections of the sites, not seeing them in their immediate context, but also in terms of putting them in a wider historical context, looking at them in terms of extended time frames. So, the whole idea of afterlives also comes into play. I talked about the part and the whole bit. So, when I was talking about the iron pillar, or I was talking about, the practices associated with that, the part is always has to be seen as a part of a whole, So if you decontextualize it in the terms of larger understanding of history, it acquires a different meaning altogether. So if you take out one artifact and see it in isolation from the totality, then you get a different meaning, which is being increasingly being manipulated. Such cases are increasingly being manipulated in the public domain. But at the same time, if you want to reach out to larger public on matters which concern a larger public, then we would need to include the intangible along with the tangible. And when I say intangible, I mean the stories, the folklore, the myths surrounding the place, which have over a period of time become a part of the popular history of the sites. So every time that you visit the Taj, no matter what you want to explore, everyone wants to know whether the hands of the artisans were cut off, or whether there was a plan not to build a black Taj. The interesting bit is rather in terms of anecdotes connected with the monuments. And I feel that, rather than summarily dismissing it, we could talk about stories about how these myths came into place. So one story replacing the another. So for instance, when I talk about, the Qutub, in the Qutub, chapter, one of those stories which is towards the end is about how Delhi's first Friday mosque became the might of the Islam mosque. So how something which was originally Qubat Islam, which is a sanctuary or dome of Islam in the east, becomes by way of corruption something which is known as the might of Islam mosque, Quwat al-Islam mosque. And it fits into very well with the dominant understandings that yes, there was violence, there was destruction with the coming of the Turk. So the might of Islam mosque is a good logic. And it continues, basically, right? And then you need to have a more accessible language and a more interesting format about doing that. And with that, I come to the concluding section of my talk today. And I bring back the questions with which I began by the discussion today, which is that, heritage sites are increasingly become sites of identity and sectarian politics, sometimes a political football, or used to drive social wedge. And two is that there are significant knowledge gaps despite enormous potential of these heritage sites, to build up our understanding of history. And some of those things that you notice, there is proliferation of content platform, formal and informal, including some self-publishing platforms, which talk about lot of content available now, and there are some trends visible here. The first one is the rise of the digital and social media, which creates enormous possibilities for different kinds of content. And all this content they have their constituencies, public constituencies. And these content platforms are also manipulated by different stakeholders in this whole process of knowledge formation, or knowledge mastery, or control of knowledge, or knowledge as power. What you also notice is in the proliferation of this content, there are a lot of this content is coming from people who are not trained in history, or not trained in methods of history writing or sensitivity to history, right? And the third part, which is all this related, the third trend one notices is that, it is not just various narratives which are competing. There are rivaling narratives which are polarizing both within and outside of the academia. And there are questions being asked in the public domain. There are many questions. I'll take up three questions, basically. And when I say that I take up three questions, I'm fully aware that these questions, there are more competent people in the audience, or who are able to answer these questions much more competently than me. But let me just take up these questions just to begin the discussion. The first one: should history be rewritten? Right? The second one: who communicates historical knowledge? Who should be communicating historical knowledge? And the third one: should historical knowledge be made more accessible? Now, let me come to it, the first question first, and as I said, there are people who would be more competent to answer this question. Should history be rewritten? history has been rewritten at all points of times. There are new sources, there are new methodologies, there are new interpretations, there are interpretations of existing interpretations, there are new findings, new geographies being made into play. So history is continuously being rewritten. Right now, what is interesting about that, is that there is one of the layers behind this question is to, of course, point out about the inadequate representations of some dynasties, periods, or geographies, which is fine, which is welcome. More research, historical research on that is welcome. About if there are certain dynasties or certain periods or geographies have been inadequately researched, it's a good research on that is always welcome and required. But what is appearing in this new writings or research, what generally and what is assumed, and what we have, how historical research has progressed, is that when you have new writings of new researches, they question dominant understandings or existing understandings, but in a way in which they add new layers and complexities and add to the texture of existing narratives rather than displacing them or upturning them. Right? So that is the way historical research has progressed, that you add new layers, new complexities, and add to the texture rather than upturning and completely doing away with the existing narratives. And the part of history rewriting slogan is also linked to making historical knowledge more comprehensible and accessible to the public. Now I come to the second question, and and I'll wind up in a few minutes now. Who should be ideally communicating historical knowledge? Simplistically speaking, it's a democratic country and we have a right to expression, so everybody could talk about that. But when you talk about more seriously speaking, like other knowledge system, history also requires a specialized knowledge. Right? The facts are subjective. They need to be explained in the context. They need to be explained and interpreted. The primary sources sometimes may not be, actually, telling you what, was happening on the ground, But we need years of training to, figure out how to read those sources, primary sources, right? One of my friends says, and I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, and he says that, very interesting example that he gives of the pandemic. That one of the things that we noticed during the pandemic was the medical specialists coming on television channels and explaining to you about the details of the disease. So there is a Dr. Guleria has a specific context. Now it's become a household name. That he's speaking to you about the people take to the doctors very seriously. So do we need to have specialists talking about serious historical matters, or matters which are very critical, or matters which have I'm adding a filter called significant public connect. And this is important because it has a bearing on the social and political fabric. And then I come to the last question, does historical knowledge need to be made more accessible? My short answer is yes. But my not so short answer is basically, we need to have better communication platforms. Now, am I suggesting that there should be any dilution in the rigors of academic research or writing? My answer is big no. I'm a strong votary of very solid academic research. But on matters which have a direct public connect, or matters which require a direct societal connect, we need to have a better communication platforms. Writing about platforms which have a better reach, making effective use of the popular and social and digital media. And this is where your blog, Professor Razavi, becomes very important. That why and dissemination of information related good writings on the social media becomes very important. So directly through sharing of these, but mostly indirectly through what I call creating ambassadors of history. And this could come in a variety of ways, but two ways I'll suggest. One is through courses on heritage, because I'm talking about heritage, so I'm talking about it. And the So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a talent pool which would feed into the chain of knowledge, which feeds into the knowledge about the heritage sites. And two, that I have been talking about for a very long time, that instituting public history as a discipline. Now, something which has come up in the West for a very long time, what happens is that people who are trained in history talk about historical, who are trained in history, they are familiar with historical methods and the rigors of historical research. They are placed at very, very critical sites, all critical sites which involve an academic public interface, and they communicate very sophisticated, advanced knowledge in a simplified form. Do we need to think about that, basically as well in terms of creating ambassadors of history? So there are significant challenges, but there are unprecedented opportunities as well. And because history as a discipline and on account of dealing with layers and complexities, history has a unique advantage. It has more stories to tell, and it could tell the stories in a more interesting and engaging way. Thank you.
Shashank, thanks a lot. I think you spoke with clarity and you touched upon almost all the aspects which are relevant as far as the heritage in India is concerned. अब जाहिर है कि ये ऐसा टॉपिक है, एक ऐसा मौजू है कि जिसके ऊपर जितना ना बोला जाए वो कम है। बहुत से सवाल ज़हन में आते हैं जब कोई इस टाइप की टॉक सुनता है जो शशांक ने आज दी। मैं इस वक़्त आपके सामने थोड़ा-सा हिंदुस्तानी में इसलिए गुफ्तगू कर रहा हूँ कि शायद कुछ ऐसे लोग हों कि जो ज़्यादा कंफर्टेबल फ़ील करें अगर हम लोग अपनी हिंदुस्तानी ज़ुबान में थोड़ा-सा उसको एज़ अ समरी फॉर्म हम बात करें। हेरिटेज क्या है? उसका व्याख्यान आज बिल्ट हेरिटेज, उसका व्याख्यान आज शशांक सिन्हा ने किया, जिन्होंने अपनी किताब में 3 बड़े इम्पोर्टेंट साइट्स को टेक अप किया। दिल्ली, आगरा और फतेहपुर सीकरी, जो तीनों इत्तेफाक से फॉर्चुनेटली और अनफॉर्चुनेटली मुगलों से रिलेटेड रहे। मैं भी मुगल हिस्ट्री पढ़ाता हूँ, लेकिन मेरा ख्याल ये है कि शायद थोड़ी बहुत ज़्यादती हम लोग प्री मुगल पीरियड के साथ कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट्स उस पीरियड के भी हैं और उस पीरियड के भी बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट हेरिटेज साइट्स सर्वाइव कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस पे ना सल्तनत हिस्ट्री पे उस कदर काम हो पाया है या हो रहा है आज की दुनिया में, ना उन साइट्स को टेकअप किया जा रहा है। फॉर एग्जांपल शशांक, आपने कुव्वतुल इस्लाम मॉस्क को लिया। जाहिर है कि कोई भी डिस्कशन ऑन दिल्ली without referring to Quwwatul Islam Mosque would not be complete, right? आपने उसको शामिल किया और आज की टॉक में भी उसका रेफरेंस दिया। फॉर एग्जांपल, आपने एक चीज़ जो वेल नोन है हम हिस्टोरियंस में, लेकिन पब्लिक में बहुत ज़्यादा वो नहीं जानी जाती है, कुव्वतुल इस्लाम मॉस्क के नाम को लेके। एक्चुअली जितने भी सोर्सेज उठा के आप सल्तनत पीरियड से लेके और आखिर तक आप उठा के देख लें, कहीं के ऊपर भी ये टर्म कुव्वतुल इस्लाम मॉस्क नहीं है। ये टर्म अलीगढ़ की देन है एक तरीके से। अलीगढ़ की इसलिए क्योंकि जो बानी अलीगढ़ थे, द पर्सन हु फाउंडेड द मोहम्मदन एंग्लो ओरिएंटल कॉलेज, मैं ज़्यादा उस पर नहीं बोलूँगा, उनके कॉलेज का नाम ही उनको डिफाइन कर रहा है, मोहम्मदन एंग्लो ओरिएंटल कॉलेज, जिस नाम से उन्होंने इंस्टीट्यूशन बनाया था यहाँ, जो आज अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी के नाम से जाना जाता है और जिससे मुझ जैसों की रोजी रोटी चलती है। सर सैयद अहमद खान ने जब उन सोर्सेस को पढ़ा और पढ़ने के बाद जो एक्चुअल टर्म था उसको हल्के से करप्ट करके अपनी आसार सरादीद में उसे कुव्वतुल इस्लाम कर दिया। एक्चुअल टर्म जो सल्तनत पीरियड से लेके मुगल पीरियड के सोर्सेस तक जहां जहां भी ये टर्म जो ये इस बिल्डिंग का जिक्र आया है, जहां मस्जिद जामे के अलावा अगर कोई नाम दिया गया है तो वो नाम दिया गया है कुब्बतुल इस्लाम, कुब्बा, द डोम, द सैंक्चुअरी। जो शशांक ने आज आफ्टर लाइफ की बात की थी, तो इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में मैं यहीं से शुरू कर रहा हूँ। सर सैयद अहमद खान जिस पीरियड में आसार सनादीद लिख रहे हैं, यू नो दैट्स द कॉलोनियल पीरियड, गदर हो चुका है, इंग्लिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी से राजपाट जो है वो क्राउन के हाथों में आ चुका है और एक तरीके से कॉलोनियल मास्टर्स जो हैं वो अपनी पॉलिसीज को बाकायदगी के साथ यहाँ पे इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं। ऐसे पीरियड में जब सर सैयद लिखते हैं तो शायद उनको जरूरत समझ में आती है कि यहाँ के ऊपर थोड़ा सा माइट ऑफ इस्लाम की बात करें तो ज्यादा बेहतर होगा। कुव्वत, माइट ऑफ इस्लाम इंस्टेड ऑफ कुब्बतुल इस्लाम, दी सैंक्चुअरी, जो एक प्रोटेक्शन के फॉर्म में, जिसने जिसने अगर सल्तनत हिस्ट्री पढ़ी है वो जानता है, जो अभी शशांक ने भी रेफर किया था कि ये आपकी की किताब में बाकायदा रेफर्ड है वो, कि सुल्तान इल्तुतमिश के पीरियड से लेके और दिल्ली सल्तनत का जो पीरियड था, दैट हैड बिकम द सैंक्चुअरी ऑफ द एलीट्स ऑफ सेंट्रल एशिया who were migrating to India in order to escape the onslaught of the Mongols. तो उनको यहाँ पे सैंक्चुअरी मिलती थी। तो उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में एक तरीके से दिल्ली जो था, जो हजरत दिल्ली कहलाया, क्योंकि ऑल टाइप ऑफ मिस्टिक्स, सेंट्स सब यहाँ जमा हो गए थे, तो उस पीरियड में अगर इस जामे मस्जिद को, सेंट्रल मॉस्क को अगर नाम दिया गया था तो वो सैंक्चुअरी ऑफ इस्लाम दिया गया था। आफ्टर लाइफ आते आते, कॉलोनियल पीरियड आते आते, जिस वक्त इसके ऊपर तवज्जो दी गई, काम किया गया, तो नाम को थोड़ा सा ट्विस्ट करके अब जो उस पीरियड का जो डिमांड थी उस हिसाब से उसको माइट ऑफ इस्लाम के नाम से पुकारा जाने लगा, जो सूट करता था, बहुत ज्यादा सूट करता था कॉलोनियल मास्टर्स को। आज भी जिस अंदाज में, क्योंकि जो हम आफ्टर लाइफ की जो शशांक बात कर रहे हैं, आई विश के एक एस्पेक्ट अगर ये और जरा सा उसको ऐड कर लेते, कि जो आफ्टर लाइफ में बहुत से लोगों ने किताब लिखी, मैं उस ऑथर का नाम भूल रहा हूँ जिसने वो खलजी मॉन्यूमेंट्स, दिल्ली के मॉन्यूमेंट्स पे, ही इज समवेयर इन जर्मनी, ही हैज रिटन अ बुक ऑन द आफ्टर लाइफ ऑफ फिरोज शाह कोटला एंड अदर प्लेसेस। बहुत अच्छा काम है, उस टाइप के काम हो रहे हैं, लेकिन उसके अलावा अगर शशांक या कोई इस टाइप का एक ऑथर इस काम को भी ले, कि जो आज 2014 से लेके अब तक जो अंदाज चल रहा है, इसमें किस टाइप से इंटरप्रेट किए जा रहे हैं मुगल एंड मिडिवल मॉन्यूमेंट्स, आजकल कैसे उनको परसीव किया जा रहा है, दैट इज येट अनदर एस्पेक्ट। क्योंकि ये ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, जैसे इन्होंने लाल किले के बारे में बताया, शाहजहां के लाल किला, लेकिन क्योंकि वो रेबेलियन में उसका इस्तेमाल हुआ, यहाँ पे ट्रायल्स होल्ड की गई। आज लाल किले को हम शाहजहां के लाल किले के नाम से नहीं हम एसोसिएट करते हैं, जो हिस्टोरियन है वो जानते हैं, लेकिन जो वो किया जाता है वो हमारी रिपब्लिक के उससे किया जाता है, एंटी कॉलोनियल उससे किया जाता है। वो किया जाता है कि हम इंडिपेंडेंस हो गए, जहां भी आपको हिंदुस्तान इंडिपेंडेंस दिखाया जाएगा तो औरंगजेब की वो बनाई हुई वो बाहर की दीवारें और वो शाहजहां का बनाया हुआ बड़ा सा गेट, उसके ऊपर तिरंगा झंडा लहराता हुआ, वो हमारे इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया की सिंबल बन के आपके सामने आएगा। तो ये जो आफ्टर लाइव्स होती हैं, ये ऑल्सो रिफ्लेक्ट the present conditions, and I think that we as historians should also pay attention कि किस अंदाज में उन मॉन्यूमेंट्स को, उन चीजों को आज परसीव किया जा रहा है। ये भी एक एस्पेक्ट हम लोगों को अपने जहन में रखना चाहिए। आपने जैसे जिक्र किया कुछ साल पहले, you know what happened was that there was an attempt, a good attempt on the part of the government, because they were not thinking otherwise. They said that all those heroes who are related with the site, their idols and sculptures should be put up at Fatehpur Sikri, for example. मसला वहां आके अटक गया था कि बहुत से जो सो कॉल्ड जो उससे एसोसिएटेड लीडर्स थे, उनके चेहरा बनाया कैसे जाए, किस टाइप का आइडल बनाया जाए, उस पर काफी कंट्रोवर्सी हुई। अब वो मामला खत्म हो गया, लेकिन एक अटेम्प्ट थी उसको प्रेजेंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट देने की। उसी तरीके से बीर छबीली का एक टीला कहलाता है फतेहपुर सीकरी में, जहाँ एक्सकैवेशंस हुए, और एक्सकैवेशंस में कुछ वहां से आर्टिफैक्ट्स बरामद हुए इन द फॉर्म ऑफ जैन स्कल्पचर्स। फतेहपुर सीकरी के अंदर जो एक म्यूजियम बनाया गया, जो एक वेल लेड आउट ट्रेडिशन है कॉलोनियल पीरियड से लेके, और जब से आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया आया है, हम जो भी हेरिटेज साइट होती है, फॉर एग्जांपल सांची है, सारनाथ है, कोई जगह भी है, वहीं के ऊपर साइट म्यूजियम होता है, वहीं पे एक म्यूजियम बना दिया जाता है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली फतेहपुर सीकरी में अब तक कोई ऐसा म्यूजियम एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर रहा था। तो बीर छबीली में जब एक्सकेवेशंस हुए, तो उसके बाद फिर उस पीरियड की जो भी गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया थी, उसने एक साइट म्यूजियम वहां बनाने की बात की, और उसमें वहां की जो आर्टिफैक्ट्स थे वो निकाल के रखे गए। अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो अकबर से रिलेटेड जितने भी रिलिक्स एंड आर्टिफैक्ट्स थे, वो एक्सकेवेशन से लेके आज तक कभी मंजर आम पे नहीं लाए गए। दे वर नेवर ब्रॉट टू लाइट, एंड उसकी किसी पब्लिक ने भी डिमांड नहीं की। मैंने बीच में जिस वक्त शशांक रिकनेक्ट कर रहे थे, आई सेड दैट इन इंडिया समहाउ जो पब्लिक का परसेप्शन है हेरिटेज के बारे में, वो बहुत वीक है। we as a citizen of the country are actually not interested in our past. शशांक ने जिक्र किया कि कई जगह पे उसको पार्क्स बना दिए गए हैं, हेरिटेज जगह है जहाँ पे वो अपने सैटरडेज एंड संडेज को पिकनिक बनाने लोग जाते हैं, है ना। लेकिन पिकनिक बनाने भी जाते हैं, दे आर नॉट एक्चुअली इंटरेस्टेड टू नो अबाउट द प्लेस वेयर दे आर विजिटिंग। पॉसिबली जो काम जो बिल्कुल एंड में शशांक ने एक जो बात कही, वो ये कही कि जो यूरोप के और यूएस के और लंदन के जो हिस्टोरियंस हैं, उन्होंने बहुत पॉजिटिव रोल प्ले किया है पब्लिक परसेप्शन को माउल्ड करने में। अनफॉर्चुनेटली समहाउ द इंडियन हिस्टोरियंस both from ancient and medieval, somehow we have failed to bring our things to the notice of the population of the country. हमने बहुत अपनी हाईली हिस्टोरियंस जार्गन में बात कही है। शशांक जब हिस्टोरियन थे तो जब उन्होंने आर्टिकल लिखे थे वो नदीम साहब समझ सकते हैं, और नदीम साहब के आर्टिकल शशांक साहब समझ सकते हैं, और बेचारा जो स्टूडेंट है वो सोचता ही रह जाएगा कि इन्होंने क्या लिखा है। वो आदमी जिसने हिस्ट्री नहीं पढ़ी उसके बारे में तो छोड़ दीजिए। जरूरत जो शशांक बात कर रहे हैं कि हम लोग को सोचना चाहिए वो ये है कि आज के पीरियड में जरूरत उस चीज की है कि जो भी मॉडर्न रिसर्चेस हुई उनको आप जरा सा अपने लेवल से नीचे उतर के पब्लिक के लेवल पे लाके पब्लिक को बताएं कि क्या काम हुआ है, क्या क्या चीज क्या है, ताकि उनमें एंड एज ही एक्चुअली पॉइंटेड आउट that one of the positive things which has started in the last decade or so are these heritage walks, which are immensely going to help. हर चीज के गुड एस्पेक्ट्स होते हैं, हर चीज के बैड एस्पेक्ट्स होते हैं। पेंडेमिक ने हमारी लाइफ को बदल के रख दिया, लेकिन एक पॉजिटिव जो उसका असर हुआ है वो ये हुआ है कि जिस टाइप का प्रोग्राम आज हम आप कर रहे हैं, कारवान कर रहा है, देयर आर मेनी सच पब्लिक प्लेटफॉर्म्स जहां से अब यूट्यूब के जरिए, फेसबुक के जरिए और दूसरे जराए से वो इम्पोर्टेंट रिसर्चेस जो कैद थी बहुत ही एक्सपेंसिव वॉल्यूम्स में, नाउ दे आर बीइंग ब्रॉट बिफोर द पब्लिक, एंड नाउ इट इज पॉसिबल कि हम अपने आर्किटेक्चरल हेरिटेज को समझें और उसके बारे में अपने बच्चों को, अपने यंगस्टर्स को समझाने की कोशिश करें। इट इज एज शशांक पॉइंटेड आउट कि जो साइट्स हैं, मैंने कहा था जब मैंने शुरू किया था, मैंने कहा था कि ये आर्कियोलॉजिकल स्ट्रक्चरल बिल्ड साइट्स जो हैं ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सोर्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन है टू अंडरस्टैंड आवर पास्ट कल्चर्स एंड हिस्ट्रीज। लेकिन शशांक ने एक चीज और पॉइंट आउट की थी कि ये जो मॉन्यूमेंट्स हैं, हेरिटेज है हमारा, दे आर ऑल्सो साइट्स ऑफ कॉन्टेस्टेशंस बिटवीन डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ व्यू पॉइंट्स। मुझे याद है कि व्हेन आई हैड गॉन शशांक to the Qutub complex, once taking my students, I was exposed to certain guides who started telling me, हम बताते हैं कि ये कुतुब मीनार है क्या, और उन्होंने उसको फिर बताया कि कैसे यहाँ के ऊपर पृथ्वीराज चौहान का ये एक मीनार है, और इस मीनार पे चढ़ के वो जो थे वो सूर्य नमस्कार और चांद की पूजा और ये सब किया करते थे, और क्या करते थे, पूरी एक उनकी हिस्ट्री। एक जमाना था, आई थिंक इट वाज 80s, Shashank, that the Aligarh people did try to intervene in this guide business. We tried to train certain guides by giving lectures, by going to Agra, और हम लोगों ने उसका शुरू किया था, और I still remember that throughout 80s, in fact till early 90s, टूरिस्ट गाइड्स जो आगरा रीजन में आते थे उनमें मेरा फेस उस आने में बड़ा नोन हो गया था। तो जब भी मैं अलीगढ़ से कोई टीम लेके जाया करता था तो वो टूरिस्ट गाइड्स जो थे, जो दिल्ली से आए हुए होते थे और जो आगरा के अपने होते थे, वो अपने लोगों को लेके कहते थे अब इनकी बात सुनो कि ये सुनाएंगे, ये अच्छा सुनाएंगे, है ना। तो जाहिर है कि वो जिस टाइप की लैंग्वेज इस्तेमाल करके चीज़ों को समझाते हैं वो तो हमारे पास नहीं है, लेकिन एक्चुअली एक हम लोग की छोटी सी अटेम्प्ट से काफ़ी दिन तक उसका असर रहा था। अनफॉर्चुनेटली यूजीसी ने फिर हम लोगों की वो ग्रांट्स बंद कर दी थी, तो हम लोग उस जो इरफान साहब ने ये पूरा प्रोसेस शुरू किया था, आउटरीच प्रोजेक्ट जो था हम लोगों का, दैट एंडेड, और वो चीज़ ख़त्म हो गई। आई थिंक that is something which has to be revived once again. जो one of the takes from your talk today, as far as I am concerned, is this कि ये चीज बहुत जरूरी है कि historians, professional historians, students और प्रोफेशनल गाइड्स, इन तीनों के बीच में एक तालमेल होना चाहिए कि जिसके थ्रू हम अपने परसेप्शंस को इन तक पहुंचा सकें. जाहिर है कि these sites are have their afterlives, multiple histories, afterlives. In fact, these monuments are given to a continuous dialogue between past and present. And उसमें बहुत सी चीजें बदल भी जाती हैं, बहुत सी चीजें पॉजिटिव भी हो जाती हैं, नेगेटिव भी हो जाती हैं, लेकिन अगर इंटरवेंशन प्रोफेशनल हिस्टोरियंस के इस फील्ड में रहे तो आई थिंक समथिंग कैन बी डन. One of the things, Shashank, which I would also like to point out is that ये जो आगा खां ट्रस्ट ने जो हुमायूं के मकबरे में या आपके सुंदर नर्सरी में जो काम किया, हम अलीगढ़ वालों को उनसे थोड़ा सा शिकायत रही और उस शिकायत की बिना पे आगा खां वाले हम लोग से बहुत नाराज जाहिर रहते हैं. बहुत से उन्होंने अच्छे काम किए हैं, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू डिनाई दैट. बहुत से ऐसे काम है जिससे हम एग्री नहीं करते, है ना. उसमें से कुछ काम ऐसे हैं कि जैसे आपने अभी कहा, आपके लेक्चर में आया कि these monuments are sites which are a continuous dialogue between past and present. Some of these monuments, especially the tomb of Humayun, is never a monument of a particular phase of history. या अकबर के पीरियड में उनकी हुमायूं की बेवा ने बनवा के खत्म नहीं कर दिया, बस बन गया और खत्म हो गई बात. वो जब से बना था उस वक्त से लेके और एटलीस्ट 1857 तक इट वाज अ लिविंग मॉन्यूमेंट. अभी आफ्टर लाइफ, वो वाली आफ्टर लाइफ की हम बात नहीं कर रहे हैं कि जो खलजी मॉन्यूमेंट्स और दूसरी जगह पे जो होती है या लाल किले में जो हुआ है, आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट. I am talking about the fact that Humayun's tomb, at least, was a very vibrant structure which was, within inverted commas, alive from the period of Akbar down to the last Mughals. Right? In the sense that the tomb of Humayun was not only the tomb of Humayun himself, ये इनका खानदानी कब्रिस्तान था और बहुत से लेटर मुगल बादशाह भी यहाँ पे दफन, और शुरू से आखिर तक उसमें चीजें ऐड होती गई, सब्सट्रैक्ट होती गई, है ना. वो एक कंटिन्यूअस एक शक्ल का नहीं रहा. एडिशंस, सब्सट्रैक्शन जब आप यूज करते हैं, मेरा अगर आबाई घर है, मेरे परदादा ने बनवाया था, लेकिन अगर मैं यूज कर रहा हूं उसे, मेरे बाप ने यूज किया तो उन्होंने कुछ ऐड कराया, कुछ सब्सट्रैक्ट कराया, अब मैं कर रहा हूं तो मैं अपने लिहाज से उसको करूंगा, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. आई मीन एक लिविंग स्ट्रक्चर जो होता है उसमें कांस्टेंट चेंजेस आते जाते हैं. अब मैं रतीश नंदा साहब से एक सवाल पूछूंगा, जो आपने कहा कि हमने ओरिजिनल कर दिया है, कौन सा ओरिजिनल किया है? 1857 वाला ओरिजिनल किया है या अकबर के पीरियड का ओरिजिनल किया है, औरंगजेब के पीरियड का ओरिजिनल किया है, या किस वक्त का किया है ना. तो ये एक चीजें होती है. लेकिन अगर हम हिस्ट्री को कायदे से पढ़ते रहें तो शायद ये जो हम दो प्रोफेशनल्स में जो एक कॉन्टेस्टेशन है, रतीश नंदा एंड अलीगढ़ स्कूल, वो खत्म हो जाए. वो हमारी बात समझे, हम उनकी बात समझे. जाहिर है कि अगर मॉन्यूमेंट है तो उसको अगर मेंटेन किया जा रहा है तो हिस्टोरियन से ज्यादा खुश कोई और नहीं हो. आप उसको और लाइफ दे रहे हैं. हमारा सिर्फ ये कहना है कि उस बिल्डिंग को कम से कम उस पीरियड का रहने दीजिए जिस पीरियड में वो बनाई गई थी. एक चीज को आप करके आपने कहा कि हमने प्लान रखे थे, मालूम नहीं किस पीरियड के प्लान थे, आपने तो हमें नहीं दिखाया, हमें नहीं मालूम. आप 1857 के प्लान लिए बैठे थे, 1800 के लिए बैठे थे, 1750 के लिए बैठे थे, कौन से नक्शे मौजूद थे जो कहीं के नहीं है, हुमायूं के पीरियड के आपके पास चीजें मौजूद थी, जरा हमें बता दीजिए कौन सा ऐसा सोर्स है जिसमें मुगल मसाला बनाने की तरकीबें दी हुई हैं, और अगर ये उज्बेकिस्तान और सेंट्रल एशिया में जो तरकीबें थी उससे बनता था तो ताजमहल और हुमायूं को मकबरा सेंट्रल एशिया में क्यों नहीं बन गया, ईरान में क्यों नहीं बन गया, सिर्फ हिंदुस्तानी में बन के क्यों रह गया? अरे भाई, ये मॉन्यूमेंट जो हैं ये हमारी हेरिटेज है, ये गंगा जमनी तहजीब जिसे हम कहते हैं, जहां दी ईरानियन, सेंट्रल एशियन, तिमुरिड along with राजपूत, गुजराती, जाने कौन कौन से इन्फ्लुएंसेस, रीड अकबरनामा. The architects from various regions were called to build up these buildings. है ना? मैंने काम किया है, मैं हो सकता है कि आप में से कुछ को लग रहा हो कि मैं कौन सी बकवास कर रहा हूँ. मैंने काम किया है मॉन्यूमेंट्स पे, मेसन्स मार्क को जमा किया हुआ है. बिलीव माय वर्ड, एक भी स्टोन में मेसन या मेमार, कुतुब कॉम्प्लेक्स से लेके और ताजमहल और सफदरजंग के म्यूजियम तक, सफदरजंग के टूम तक, एक भी कोई सेंट्रल एशियन और मुसलमान नहीं मिला, है ना? मेरी बात पे यकीन ना हो, पुष्पा प्रसाद की किताब देख लीजिए. पुष्पा प्रसाद की किताब पे यकीन ना हो, JPH के आप रिसर्चेस देख लीजिए, है ना? ये जो मॉन्यूमेंट्स हैं, they are the representations of the conjunction of two cultures, right? Whether it is Fatehpur Sikri, whether it is the Taj Mahal, whether it is the Agra Fort, whether it is the tomb of Humayun or any structure, ये मिलजुल के बनाई गई एक ऐसा क्रिएशन है जो ना ईरान में मिल सकता था, ना सेंट्रल एशिया में मिल सकता था. तैमूर की तो उसके जहन में भी नहीं आ सकता था कि ऐसा कुछ बन सकता, राइट? So these are the heritage where all type of traditions join hand to give shape to it, right? So एक चीज जो हम लोगों को समझना पड़ेगा, और इस चीज को हमें बार बार स्ट्रेस करना पड़ेगा, इज दिस फैक्ट. और ये फैक्ट तभी आ सकता है कि जब हम इस टाइप के प्रोग्राम्स करें, इस टाइप जो शशांक ने जिस टाइप की किताब लिखी है, जाहिर है मैंने फतेहपुर सीकरी पे किताब लिखी, अच्छे खासे पेजेस की किताब है, और शशांक ने सिर्फ एक चैप्टर लिखा है उसके ऊपर अपनी किताब में. लेकिन समेट के रख दिया है, जो भी मैंने कहा था दूसरों ने कहा था उसे. अब जो पढ़ेगा, जिसके पास बहुत ज्यादा टाइम होगा और वो होगा, वो मेरी किताब पढ़ेगा. जल्दी से बात समझनी है कि फतेहपुर सीकरी क्या है, तो शशांक की किताब पढ़ लीजिए, आपको समझ में आ जाएगा. मेरी किताब पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं, जहां जहां रिलेवेंट है इन्होंने ब्रैकेट में दे दिया है, नदीम रिजवी किताब में लिखा हुआ है ना. सच वर्क्स आर नीडेड, and that is the relevance and importance of such works, which take for example, जो अभी इन्होंने एग्जांपल दी, गजनी गेट इन आगरा फोर्ट. एक अटेम्प्ट था उस वक्त कॉलोनियल पीरियड में कि किसी सूरत से ये प्रूफ किया जाए कि देयर इज अ क्लैश ऑफ कल्चर्स. ये वाली डिबेट तो बहुत अभी आई है, हंटिंगटन वाली, लेकिन उस पीरियड में भी ये था कि कैसे दिखाएं कि सब आपस में है. तो उसके लिए एक गेट वहां से, वो बेचारा जो ला रहा था उसको भी कुछ नहीं मिला था, उसको भी मालूम था क्या ला रहे हैं, वो कह नहीं पा रहा था कि क्या लाए हैं, लेकिन प्रोपेगेंडा किया गया उसका. लेकिन क्योंकि अंग्रेजों में थोड़ा सा एक अंदर का उनकी सेल्फ रेस्पेक्ट तो थोड़ी बाकी होती है, तो अल्टीमेटली उसने सबको बता दिया कि भाई ये वो नहीं है, ये वहां से लेके आए हैं. और फिर जब उसका इंस्क्रिप्शन पढ़ा गया तो उस पर भी सुल्तान सुबुक्तकीन और महमूद अब गजनी उनके जिक्र थे, कहाँ से ये लेके आया है. लेकिन उसको पोस्टरिंग जो उसकी आज भी शशांक जी जो वहां रखा हुआ है, जो मुझे शिकायत है ASI से, उसको कहीं और रख सकते थे. आज भी उसी अंदाज में उसी जगह पे जहां पे अंग्रेजों ने लाके रखा था वो रखा हुआ है. हालांकि ASI का एक बोर्ड छोटा सा जरूर लगा हुआ है जिसके ऊपर बताया जाता है क्या है, लेकिन जो हिंदुस्तान की पब्लिक है वो पढ़ती नहीं है क्या लिखा हुआ है. वो आज भी जब आप जाएंगे तो टूरिस्ट गाइड आपको यही बताएगा, ये सोमनाथ का गेट है, और लोग लाइन लगा के उसे देखते हैं और ये देख के जाते हैं कि ये सोमनाथ का गेट है, जो इन मुगलों ने यहाँ ऊपर किस तरह से उन्होंने 1000 साल की तौहीन जो की गई है उसका एक नमूना बन के वो सामने नजर आता है. These are some of the things which I wanted to discuss. जाहिर है कि शशांक जी आपसे कोई सवाल की तो गुंजाइश नहीं है, सिर्फ इतना ही एक है कि जो एंडेवर जिस टाइप से आप हैं, राना हैं, स्वप्ना लिटिल हैं, आप लोग जिस अंदाज में जो हिस्ट्रीज, ऑथेंटिक हिस्ट्रीज लिखी गई हैं, उनको आप एक आसान जबान में करके और एक पब्लिक के लिए आप प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं. हैट्स ऑफ टू यू पीपल, क्योंकि इट इज थ्रू वर्क्स लाइक योर्स दैट द पब्लिक परसेप्शंस. बस इससे पहले कि मैं सवाल जो एक आध पूछे गए हैं उनको मैं टेकअप करूं, लेकिन एक चीज मैं पॉइंट आउट करना चाहता हूं. हम लोग अंग्रेजों को बहुत फॉलो करते हैं. शशांक भी अंग्रेजों के कपड़े पहने बैठे हैं और मैं भी, सिवाय एक बंदी मैंने हिंदुस्तानी डाल ली है, मैं भी पैंट शर्ट पहने बैठा हूँ. हम लोग जो है अंग्रेज हैं, सब के सब अंग्रेजी भी बोलते हैं अपनी जुबानें छोड़ के. लेकिन अंग्रेज से एक चीज सीख लें, उनके यहाँ अगर उनका दुश्मन भी 2 दिन भी कहीं आके रहा है ना, तो उस जगह पे उन्होंने ब्लू रंग की प्लेट लगा दी है. अगर आप जाएंगे तो उनके यहाँ इतना वो है कि अगर उनका गांधी जिसने उनको अपोज किया, ऐसी एम्पायर के जहां सूरज नहीं गुरूब होता था उसको इतना गुरूब कर दिया कि इतना साइलेंट बन गया. लेकिन जहां जहां वो रहा था आज भी गांधी जी के नाम की प्लेट वहां लगाई. सर सैयद अहमद खान तो चलिए कोलैबोरेटर में थे, तो जिस घर में रहे, अलीगढ़ वाले तो उनका नाम लेते नहीं थकते हैं. लगता है कि जैसे सर सैयद के अगर सही वंशज कोई है तो अलीगढ़ में पढ़ा हुआ लड़का है, लेकिन सर सैयद की एक चीज नहीं बचा पाए. अलीगढ़ में घर था, उसको पूरा बुनियाद से तोड़ के एक नया एक मॉन्स्ट्रोसिटी बना दी. दिल्ली में जो उनका घर था, आज ढूंढते घूमिए और पुरानी दीवारें देख देख के कहिए कि शायद ये दीवार उनके घर की होगी, तो ये हमारा तरीका है ना. लेकिन अंग्रेजों ने अपने दुश्मन की भी चीज को, और उनके जो वीकेंड्स होते हैं उसमें उनके स्कूल के और दूसरे बच्चे, उन लोगों को ले जा के उन साइट्स को दिखाया जाता है. और उनके जो नेबरहुड्स हैं, हर नेबरहुड में आपको वो ब्लू प्लेट नजर आ जाएगी. कोई किसी पीरियड का हीरो है, कोई किसी पीरियड का हीरो है, और वो अपनी जनता को, अपनी आवाम को अपने पास से कनेक्टेड रखते हैं. एक हम हैं जो हम इस चक्कर में होते हैं कि अपना बिल्ट हेरिटेज को कैसे बिल्डर के हवाले करके उसको तोड़ दिया जाए. आज दिल्ली में आलम यह है कि कितने स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं which are just disappearing and they are being replaced by skyscrapers, and none of us is paying any attention towards them. And now with these few comments I would ask Shagufta to put up certain of the questions which have been asked to Shashank. Kamlesh Mohan asks, increase in prejudice regarding knowledge production and dialogue between past and present has disrupted the healthy and positive view of futuristic view of Ganga Jamuni culture. What is your view, Dr. Shashank Sinha, to salvage crisis of knowledge production and reception by younger generations?
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर मोहन. और उसके पहले नदीम साहब आपका, कि आपने इतनी खूबसूरती से इतने तहों को सामने लाया कि मुझे तो बहुत आनंद आ गया. मुझे एक समय मैं बिल्कुल उसी में रम गया था करने के लिए, कि वो एक जिसको कहते हैं कि एक सच अ पावरफुल एपिलॉग टू दिस लेक्चर दैट बहुत सारी बातें, इसलिए आपका बहुत शुक्रिया कि आपने बहुत सारी बातें जो कहनी चाहिए और उन तहों को उजागर करना चाहिए वो लाने के लिए. I think, thank you, Professor Mohan. I think as far the younger generation are concerned, they are more used to the new forms of dissemination of knowledge. Knowledge production continues to remain in academic settings. But interestingly, what is happening, and that is something somewhat a bit of an area of concern, and that is something that I talked about in my lecture, is that there are a lot of content platforms which are coming up in the public domain. And a lot of these content platforms have also been facilitated because of the rise of the digital and the social media. And you always had in a history a tussle between, there always debates. But what was not there is an attempt to upturn the narratives. You would always add layers and complexities to the narratives. Add to the texture of the narratives, right? To take the discussions further, and they would be revisited. But the idea of upturning the narrative, or displacing the narrative, the so-called narratives, is something which is not an unsettling one. And therefore, a kind of a connect with the younger generation, who are more familiar with the idea of social media, uh, and the digital media, who are more used to it and who are more familiar with that thing. That constituency or that area needs to be habited, through different kinds of knowledge interventions. Heritage walks could be one of them. That the blog that Professor Rizavi writes, blast from the past. So these are making this knowledge accessible to them. And the reason why I think, or the even coming up with sharing things on social media, relevant things on social media, I think this is important because, and I feel not just important because there is a idea of you know uh, of presenting correct histories, right, which is a positive aim. But then there is a neutral aim as well, which is related to the question that you asked, is the Ganga Jamuni culture. It could, if you don't do that, then the idea, it could be unsettling for the social fabric, the socio-cultural fabric that Ganga Jamuni culture represents that. Because as I said, there are multiple content platforms, and now there are one of the things to feel concerned about is self-publishing platforms, and a lot of self-publishing platforms which are facilitated with the rise of the digital and the social media. And there are constituencies where these knowledge initiatives or these knowledge packages are received as well. So the whole idea of bridging this gap, this area between the tourist guide and the academic setting, needs to be habited, through a variety of contents, which comes, from either historians or people trained in history. There are a lot of students, and therefore I said this whole idea about creating ambassadors of history, either through courses or heritage courses, because I'm talking about heritage, this could apply to other things as well, and which could feed into this change related to the knowledge production around the sites. Or through one of the things that I feel very important is this whole idea about engaging or bringing in elements of public history, which has because having people trained in history as various sites, including museums, which you already have, battlefields, films, biopics. There is what I find very interesting about the current times, and it relates to the kind of question that you put up, is there is a lot of interest in history. You see biopics, you see television programs, you see lot of serials coming up, you see historical fiction, popularity of historical fiction, you see heritage photography, you see these days I go and see that so what you see is there's a lot of engagement, or idea or interest about history. If you have proper conduits of knowledge, which are inhabited on various platforms, including the digital and social media, which come either from historians or from students trained in history, or those people who are trained in history, we could address this crisis gradually. not suddenly, but gradually. It's going to take some time, but that would be required, and more accessible histories will certainly be required.
Thank you, Professor Kamlesh Mohan ji, for asking this question, uh, which I think Shashank did answer quite well. I hope and wish that, if I'm not wrong, you are living in Punjab, and there are many monuments in Punjab, heritage sites in Punjab, and I hope one day you would also help us in reaching them and trying to understand them. There's a question by Zainab Naqvi. Accessibility definitely is an issue with heritage and the masses that you have raised, sir. Not a question, but something I would like to point here is that there was a time when academics used to look down upon people who talked of heritage on social media as Facebook historians and not real historians. In the past years, though, we increasingly have realized that it is essentially that divide and the high handedness of academia that led to this gap, which led to the flourishing of content. It's lost. I think, Zainab, always try to break your question into two, otherwise, it disappears. But we can understand what you are talking about. That was a good suggestion. And Zainab, uh, कोई बात नहीं, बहुत से लोग मुझे भी फेसबुक हिस्टोरियन नहीं पुकारते, अच्छी बात है, लेकिन हम लोग को अपना काम करना चाहिए और सीरियस आर्टिकल्स भी लिखिए और उस पर ये सब भी काम करना चाहिए. आई थिंक दैट इज अ नेसेसिटी. और जो आजकल, जैसे शशांक ने भी पॉइंट आउट किया था और आप भी कह रही हैं अपने कमेंट में, कि रिसेंट ईयर्स में ये जो डिवाइड था ये थोड़ा सा गायब हो रहा है, एंड it is playing a positive role as far as all of us are concerned. Bhavesh Vashisht, Dr. Sinha, in present scenario, how the issues of lack of master plan, encroachment, degradation, and lack of conservation with respect to monuments can be tackled?
You want me to?
I mean, he is just concerned about these issues, and if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think at this stage, these are technical issues, which I think, this is an important point that I'll take, but these required very competent knowledge domains as well, and I'm talking more about the gaps between academic and public understandings of history. But two or three things that I could, just talk, because I'm not very a person who is qualified enough to talk about technicalities of conservation or preservation. My ideas are limited by my limited understanding of issues which are there. But I think, one is that identifying, placing the site in the larger, as far as, when I look from the history, basically is concerned. When I look at, that, one of the first things about putting the site on the knowledge map. That is the first idea. And this could be done through a variety of ways, putting up things, then. Second up is then, working on the ecosystem of the sites, how you connect it with the larger domains, putting up, information networks. In the first case, you put the site on the create local knowledge and awareness about it, so that people have a sense of belonging with the site. And in the second one, basically that you put, you build up the larger ecosystem around that site. And the third one is then, you arrive at, collaborations patterns, related to that. And these are the things I talked about in an interview I gave to India Art Review. So I'll send that thing, in case this helps, basically. But on a more technical platform, I don't think I'm competent enough to answer this question.
Bhavesh, you're quite correct. I mean, all these things which Bhavesh Vashisht has asked, it needs a detailed answer. But let me very briefly talk about some of them. Yes, you are quite right, Bhavesh, that there is a lack of master plan. How to tackle with our heritage? That is something which all of us as historians as well as the government should pay attention to, and there should be a master plan how one should approach. Giving these monuments to private players is not the option, which the government did try to do something like that. That is not the option. Encroachment, yes, that is one of the greatest malice which our monuments are suffering from. In fact, even those monuments which are World Heritage Sites. Now, for example, one of the places which even Shashank has mentioned in his book, Fatehpur Sikri, on which I am very confident to talk about. There are a large number of structures at Fatehpur Sikri which are actually very important, but are located on the periphery of the site, periphery of the imperial buildings, let me say, not the site. And ASI is bound to preserve and conserve them. It cannot, the ASI cannot escape by saying कि वो बहुत दूर है. अजमेरी दरवाजा 1.5 किलोमीटर दूर है, वहां तक हमारा नहीं है, हमारा तो ये पैलेशियल कॉम्प्लेक्स है. तो भाई मैं उसी पैलेस कॉम्प्लेक्स के अंदर की बात कर रहा हूँ, बिल्कुल उसके पॉइंट्स की. हिरन मीनार आपने देखा? हिरन मीनार और हाथीपुर, इनसे ज्यादा सेंट्रल तो कोई चीजें नहीं हो सकती. इनके बीच में वाटर वर्क्स है, जहां से पानी कलेक्ट होता था और पूरे उसमें सप्लाई होता था. उनकी बावलीज हैं, वहां पे चेंबर्स हैं, वहीं पे दूसरे स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं. जब मैं गया था, सर्वे कर रहा था 1990s में, सब अपनी ओरिजिनल जगह पे थे. अकबर से लेके अब तक बेचारे सरवाइव कर रहे थे. 90s के बाद मैं जा नहीं पाया, फिर किताब छप गई तो जश्न मनाया, उसके बाद अपनी जिंदगी में मसरूफ हो गया. अभी कुछ दिन पहले फिर गया था, बहुत दिन हो गए तो सोचा चल के साइट देख लेते हैं. चेयरमैन था तो मैंने तरीका निकाला कि स्टूडेंट्स को साथ लिया, टूर ऑर्गेनाइज करवाया और टूर लेके पहुंच गए दिखाने के लिए. अब जब इतने साल के बाद, जो 10-12 साल के बाद अपने सर्वे के बाद में पहुंचा, तो पता चला कि ये साइट जिसका मैं जिक्र कर रहा हूँ, जो वाटर वर्क्स का है और क्रूशली इंपॉर्टेंट जगह है, वहां पे वहां के जो विलेजर्स हैं, सूफी हजरात, उन्होंने वहां एक दरगाह शरीफ बनाई हुई है, जहां पे बाकायदा उनके झंडे लगे हुए हैं, उनके फूल चढ़ते हैं. बिल्कुल एएसआई के आदमी जहां खड़े हुए हैं, एग्जैक्टली वहीं पे. I made a protest. I submitted a written protest to the ASI. दे हाथ खड़े कर लिया, हम नहीं कर सकते साहब, नॉट आवर जॉब. सो इंक्रोचमेंट, वो आज बाकायदा वहां मजार बने हुए हैं. शाहजहां की बनाई हुई एक स्ट्रक्चर जो बहुत रेयर है वहां, now being occupied by such individuals who claim that they are the mujawirs of a dargah. Suddenly a dargah came up there. The inscription, a secular inscription, which is very rare at Fatehpur Sikri, announcing that this was the structure which belonged to the daroga of the kitchen. वो कोई आयत नहीं लिखी हुई है, कोई सूरा नहीं लिखा हुआ है जो आमतौर से वहां मिल जाता है. कब्र का कोई इंस्क्रिप्शन नहीं है. बिल्डिंग का नेम प्लेट है कि ये इस घर में फला साहब, ये उनका घर है, जो दारोगा फला है, बाकायदा उनके नाम के साथ, जो कहीं और नहीं मिलता. आज ये लोग उसकी कब्र बना के वहां उसको पोत के हरे हरे उस पर कपड़े डाल के, और बिल्कुल एएसआई के नाक के नीचे वो मजार बन के काम चल रहा है. इंक्रोचमेंट, मैं तो एक साइट की बात कर रहा हूँ. और ये दीज आर दी थिंग्स व्हिच इज हैपनिंग ऑल ओवर. और जो हमारी जो सो कॉल्ड जो उसको प्रोटेक्ट करने वाली एजेंसी है, इट्स केयरफ्री बिकॉज द गवर्नमेंट इटसेल्फ इज केयरफ्री. सो दैट इज अ प्रॉब्लम, एंड दैट इज ऑल्सो रिलेटेड विद योर नेक्स्ट थिंग, डिग्रेडेशन. हर चीज इट इज क्रम्बलिंग बट नॉट बीइंग सेफगार्डेड. मैंने अपनी आंखों से देखा है कि WHO से मिला हुआ एक सोल्यूशन जो दिया गया था दीवारों को साफ करने के लिए, वो पेंटेड वॉल्स पे डाल के और स्क्रबर से उसको स्क्रब कर दिया गया, और जिन पेंटिंग्स को, वॉल पेंटिंग्स को, अकबर के पीरियड की पेंटिंग्स जिनको मैंने अपने कैमरे में कैद किया था, यू वोंट फाइंड देम देयर, क्योंकि कंजर्वेशन के प्रोसेस में किसी और ने नहीं, ASI के अपने लोगों ने खड़े होकर उसको स्क्रब कर दिया, और कोई सुनने को तैयार नहीं है. We passed a number of resolutions in the Indian History Congress. No one listens. The effect of those resolutions was that I was denied the guest house of ASI there. ये तो हमारे खिलाफ आदमी से. That was the step which they had taken. So I think भुवेश वशिष्ठ जी, आपके जो सवाल है बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, और इसके ऊपर एक कोई मास्टर प्लान होना चाहिए जिससे वो किया जाए. Shabdal Saroj, sir, what you said about amalgamation or builders of monument should be told to those who say that these were made by our Baap Dada and there was nothing existing prior to their Baap Dada के. जाहिर है शब्दल जी, आप जो सवाल पूछ रहे हैं उसको जरा सा मैं दूसरे अंदाज में, मैं शशांक जो बोलना चाहेंगे बाद में बोल लेंगे. मैं आपसे ये कहूँगा कि जाहिर है कि जो भी पास्ट में गुजरा है वो शशांक जी का और मेरा बाप दादा ही है. चाहे वो अशोका रहे हों, चाहे वो कोई गुप्ता किंग रहे हों, चाहे वो मुगल आजम रहे हों, जाहिर है कि उन्हीं के वो हम इंडियंस के ही एंसेस्टर्स हैं. उन्हीं सब ने, जैसे मैंने अपने कमेंट में कहा था कि यहाँ पे किसी सेंट्रल एशियन ने या ईरानियन ने आके नहीं बिल्डिंग्स बनाई थी. हो सकता है कि एक आध प्लानर्स उनके रहे हों. We know the name of the architect who conceived the plan of say Humayun's tomb. लेकिन बनाया किसने था, that is important. और वही मेमार, वही मेसन थे जो हमारे आपके बाप दादा थे, है ना. तो जो आप कहना चाह रहे हैं वो मुझे नहीं मालूम आप क्या कहना चाह रहे हैं, लेकिन मैं जो समझ रहा हूँ वो ये समझ रहा हूँ कि जो इंडियन हेरिटेज है वो हमारे एंसेस्टर्स की बनाई हुई है, किसी पीरियड की हो, और हम पे और आप पे ये फर्ज आता है कि उनकी हम हिफाजत करें, उनको कंजर्व करें, और उनको अपने आने वाले जनरेशंस के लिए सेव करके. एनी अदर क्वेश्चन और कमेंट? I think that is all. I mean, although there are many other questions, but it is now almost 2 hours. Shashank ji, आसार सनादीद की डेट मौजूद है. There are many works. कब लिखी गई थी? So that can always be checked. Let us thank Shashank ji once again. और मैं थैंक्स आपकी करने के साथ साथ 2 मिनट आप सबका और लूँगा. वो ये कि फतेहपुर सीकरी, आपने अपने लेक्चर में जो कहा, टॉक में कहा, पानी की किल्लत, जो एक जनरल परसेप्शन बन गई. पानी की किल्लत दूर दूर तक कहीं नहीं थी. There was sufficient water even today. There is one step well, Bauli of Akbar, which still is providing water to a major part of the present town of Fatehpur Sikri, जो हकीम्स बावली कहलाती है, जो आगरा से रोड फतेहपुर सीकरी में आती है और बस अड्डे पे जाती है और बस अड्डे से शहर की तरफ जाती है. उसी पे वो बावली बुलंद दरवाजे के नीचे की तरफ के एरिया में वो सिचुएटेड है. उसी में आज भी वो पंप्स लगे हुए हैं, जो वाटर वहाँ का जो PWD या जो भी जो एजेंसी होती है वो उसको पंप्स लगा के वाटर खींच के, और वो वाटर सप्लाई सिस्टम के थ्रू आधे शहर को, जो शहर वाला पार्ट है उसमें आज भी उसी कुएं से पानी सप्लाई किया जा रहा है जो अकबर के पीरियड का था. मेरे सर्वे में अगर आप मेरी किताब देखेंगे तो इतने सदियां गुजरने के बाद भी, जबकि वो एरिया बिल्कुल अब खेतों में उसमें तब्दील हो गया है, still till date there are at least 14 step wells from Akbar's period scattered throughout the town which are existing, है ना। शशांक ने कहा कि मैंने पॉइंट आउट किया कि पॉलिटिकल रीजंस थे, इसके साथ साथ ये भी पॉइंट आउट करना बड़ा जरूरी है कि अकबर के फतेहपुर सीकरी के छोड़ने के बाद, जब अबेंडन कर दिया गया, उसके बाद भी फतेहपुर सीकरी एज अ टाउन कंटिन्यू। इतनी भीड़ थी कि एक ईंट पे स्टैम्पीड हो गई थी, लोग फतेहपुर सीकरी की जामा मस्जिद की सीढ़ियों से इतनी पब्लिक थी कि गिर के मर गई थी। कुछ काफी पॉपुलेशन रही वहां पे। एक इरफान हबीब का आर्टिकल है उस पर, पॉपुलेशन ऑफ फतेहपुर सीकरी पे, वो देख लीजिए। बहरहाल तो ये जो यानी एरिया था, अब इंपीरियल सिटी तो नहीं रहा, लेकिन इट टर्न्ड इनटू अ मार्केट फॉर द प्रोडक्शन एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ इंडिगो। नील की खेती यहां होती थी और नील को सप्लाई किया जाता था। आप जानते हैं, जो भी, अगर आप में से किसी ने अगर नील के बारे में पढ़ा है, तो जब तक सफिशिएंट वाटर ना मौजूद हो, जब तक नील की खेती वहां नहीं हो सकती है। इट रिमेन देयर, राइट। तो इतने बहुत सारे 80 के करीब वेल्स, 14 के करीब बावलियां, और दी फैक्ट कि जो जहांगीर के पीरियड में, शाहजहां के पीरियड में यूरोपियन मर्चेंट्स आके वहां इंडिगो खरीदने जाते हैं, बयाना पास में है बॉसडी सेंटर, यहाँ फतेहपुर सीकरी में भी इसका मार्केट है और यहाँ से बन के जाता है। वो पॉसिबल ही नहीं था अगर वाटर की स्कैरसिटी सप्लाई होती। नंबर 1। नंबर 2, जब फतेहपुर सीकरी छोड़ के भाग गए, पॉलिटिकल रीजन था, फला रीजन था, ढिमका रीजन था, नोबिलिटी, बहुत से नोबल्स थे, वो फतेहपुर सीकरी में रुके, गए नहीं। वो एक दूसरे को खत लिख रहे हैं। एक साहब है, ईरानी ओरिजिन के हैं, अकबर के ऑफिशियल हकीम है, पर्सनल फिजिशियन है, अपने भाई को लिख रहे हैं ईरान में जो है, कि भैया आ जाओ, बड़ी अच्छी जगह है ये, यहाँ बड़े पैसे मिल जाते हैं और यहाँ आपको सर्विस दिला दूंगा, आ जाइए। और फतेहपुर सीकरी बहुत उम्दा जगह है, यहाँ बड़े आराम से हम लोग रहेंगे। और कब लिख रहे हैं? अकबर को फतेहपुर सीकरी छोड़े हुए तकरीबन 1-1.5 साल हो चुका है। भाई को खबर ही नहीं है कि अब ये वापस नहीं आने वाले हैं यहाँ पे। पब्लिक में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी। व्हाट आई वांट टू से इज दैट पीपल वर लिविंग देयर विदाउट, अगर कहीं किल्लत होती तो वो कहते कि यहाँ मत आना, यहाँ पानी नहीं मिलता है और फला जगह होता है। अब ये अबेंडन नहीं हुआ था, सिर्फ इंपीरियल, क्योंकि इंपीरियल कैंप जहां होता था, रिमेंबर दैट मुगल्स वर पेरिपेटेटिक बाय नेचर। जहां वो होते थे वो दारुल सल्तनत होती थी। वो लाहौर चले गए थे तो लाहौर दारुल सल्तनत थी। इट रिमेन्ड इनटू अ सिटी। बहादुर शाह जफर भी यहाँ रहे। तो हर मुगल का, मोहम्मद शाह रंगीला जो जिसको आप कहते हैं, ही रिमेन्ड। शाहजहां ने अपना पैलेस वहां बनवाया। It remained into a vibrant city with sufficient quantities of water. There is a whole chapter which I have discussed it. बिल्कुल लास्ट में एक चीज और कहूंगा, अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो अभी मैं पॉइंट आउट कर चुका, कि आज कोशिश ये चल रही है with the sanction of the Archaeological Survey of India, जैसे हर जगह मंदिर, मस्जिद, मठ बनाए जा रहे हैं, फतेहपुर सीकरी के मॉन्यूमेंट्स भी, अभी मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दी थी, जाने कहाँ कहाँ के ऊपर रिलीजन, जहाँ फतेहपुर सीकरी वो कैपिटल था जहाँ सुलहकुल का नारा दिया गया था, आज वहाँ पे मजहब के नाम पे धंधा हो रहा है और हमारी गवर्नमेंटल एजेंसीज उसको अलाउ कर रही हैं। With these words, I once again thank Dr. Shashank Sinha. It was a beautiful talk. I hope that every one of you would agree with me that such studies are needed more and more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bhashan.